I reported a little bit earlier, thanks to the really fantastic Twitter account called U.S. Ministry of Truth, that there's some interesting facts about this judge that you need to know. First, from Politico, they say who signed the warrant for this raid, this unprecedented, unacceptable raid of 30-plus FBI agents storming the private residence of a former president for no crime. There's no crime that's been alleged, as far as I can tell. He had some documents, and we'll get into the documents as well, because we have the truth about that. But who signed the warrant? A source said the FBI agents obtained a search warrant from a federal magistrate judge in West Palm Beach. The West Palm Beach location of the U.S. District Court for Southern District of Florida has 3 magistrates. Judge Bruce Reinhart is the primary one that actually signed the warrant application. The court's online database showed 2 recent warrant applications, both assigned to Reinhart, who entered into its system on Monday through information about those targets of those warrants is sealed. About the targets of those warrants is sealed. So, who is Bruce E. Reinhart? Well, he doesn't have a lot of judicial milestones. You know, he didn't exactly work his way up to being a chief magistrate in order to sign warrants to investigate and raid the former president. He didn't serve as a clerk, and then as a lawyer, and then as a, the cursus honorum that you would typically expect. No, this is his first assignment, actually. In 2018, he was placed in the position of U.S. Magistrate Judge, despite not having any record of public service. In fact, he had simply been a private lawyer up till that point. But you may recognize his name from some other egregious and shocking overreaches from the Spy State. I found this pretty surprising when just searching Judge Bruce Reinhart's name. Another story that, again, I mark as one of the flagship moments in our descent into tyranny, and that was when a social media influencer, who went by the name of Ricky Vaughn, was sentenced to prison for posting a meme. Pretty shocking. Again, I thought we had a First Amendment here. How foolish that makes me. Social media influencer charged with election interference stemming from voter disinformation campaign. This, of course, was Douglas Mackey, a.k.a. Ricky Vaughn, 31-year-old from West Palm Beach, who was charged by a criminal complaint in the Eastern District of New York. He was taken into custody in West Palm Beach and made his initial appearance before U.S. Magistrate Judge Bruce E. Reinhart of the Southern District of Florida. So again, in other words, this guy posted a meme and got arrested for it and got sentenced to prison, courtesy of this Judge Reinhart. You also had another example of this very recently, actually, just on July 29th. Google won a round against conservative website operator. Google LLC got a boost in its bid for attorney's fees after defeating a conservative website operator's claims of viewpoint discrimination when a federal magistrate judge in Florida recommended awarding the tech giant nearly $150,000 in fees. That, of course, was Magistrate Judge Bruce Reinhart. His record extends. In this case, conservatives said Google actively deranks us, and we know this. It's completely public. It's obvious that this happens. Remember when leftists were up in arms about net neutrality? They're like, oh, but if you don't have net neutrality, then service providers will be able to dictate, which website you have access to. Well, that's already happening, and you don't care because it's in favor of your political position, because you're shameless hypocrites that are destroying this entire nation and deserve to be utterly and completely and totally destroyed politically. So there you go. Jailing people for memes, citing for Google to be allowed to discriminate against conservatives. But the real big story about Judge Reinhart is this: Epstein's little black book of princes. Law professors and now this prosecutor turned judge is just horrifying. While Bruce E. Reinhart was an assistant U.S. attorney, he learned confidential and non-public information about the Jeffrey Epstein case. He then used that information he learned to get a job with Jeffrey Epstein. U.S. magistrate overseeing a legal battle between Craig Wright and the estate of Dave Kleinman, who owes over $10 billion in Bitcoin fortune, and Bitcoin's underlying IP is not without controversy of his own. Bruce Reinhart once quit his job as a U.S. attorney to work for Jeffrey Epstein, and the multimillionaire accused sex trafficker who was being targeted in a probe by the U.S. Attorney's Office. As reported in the Miami Herald of November 28, 2018, Epstein also hired Bruce Reinhart, then an assistant U.S. attorney in South Florida, as now a U.S. magistrate. He left the U.S. Attorney's Office on January 1, 2008, and went to work representing Epstein's employees on January 2, 2008. Court records show. In 2011, Reinhart was named in the Crime Victims' Rights Act lawsuit, which accused him of violating Justice Department policies by switching sides, implying that he leveraged inside information about Epstein's investigation to curry favor with Epstein. As reported in the Miami Herald, Reinhart made plans that would establish his private practice while still in office. On October 23, 2007, as federal prosecutors in South Florida were in the midst of tense negotiations to finalize a plea deal with accused sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein, a very sweet plea deal, by the way. He was trafficking children out of the country in order to rape them in systematic blackmail operation for the Israeli intelligence agency, which is, by the way, part and parcel with the American and the British intelligence agency. And we can get into this a little bit later. But remember, the reason that the ABC outlet that had the Epstein story scuttled it was because the royal family said they would deny them an interview. Remember, it was Prince Andrew that was involved with Jeffrey Epstein. See, there's a supranational organization that controls all of this, and it's Israeli, and it's Anglo from the UK, and it's American, but it's actually none of these things. You understand? It just uses these. There it is, folks. Judge Reinhart, who signed the warrant to raid Tom's Mar-a-Lago residence. Maybe need some questions asked of him. At the very least, I would say. Not only did he quit his job as a U.S. attorney in order to go work for Jeffrey Epstein, when he'd already been caught, when he was in negotiations for a plea deal for his sex trafficking crimes, right? You can't even pretend to be ignorant about this. You can't say, well, I just thought he was a brilliant traitor or whatever he was pretending to be. There's no ability for them to pretend like he didn't know what was going on. So actively knowing that he was already convicted for sex trafficking, he chooses to go work for Jeffrey Epstein and represent him and his employees. But it's actually worse than that, because he apparently lied in order to do so. Also reported in the Miami Herald that Reinhart made plans that would establish his private practice while still in office. So he was in office until 2008, but on October 23, 2007, as federal prosecutors in South Florida were in the midst of tense negotiations to finalize a plea deal with accused sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein, a senior prosecutor in their office was quietly laying out plans to leave the U.S. Attorney's Office after 11 years. On that date, as emails were flying between Epstein's lawyers and federal prosecutors, Bruce E. Reinhart, now a federal magistrate, opened a limited liability company in Florida that established what would become his new criminal defense practice. In a 2011 affidavit, Reinhart swore under penalty of perjury that, quote, he was not part of a team involved in Jeffrey Epstein's investigation and therefore not privy to any confidential information about the case while he was at the U.S. Attorney's Office. However, as the Miami Herald puts it, Reinhart's former supervisor in the U.S. Attorney's Office filed a court paper contradicting him, saying that while Bruce E. Reinhart was an assistant U.S. attorney, he learned confidential, non-public information about the Epstein matter. In one of the 2011 Epstein cases, Jane Doe's 1 and 2 versus United States, Reinhart took offense at the idea that he did anything wrong. In that motion, the plaintiffs alleged that Reinhart, quote, joined Epstein's payroll shortly after important decisions were made limiting Epstein's criminal liability and improperly represented Epstein victims in follow-on civil lawsuits. Plaintiffs contend that such conduct gives at least the improper appearance that Reinhart may have attempted to curry favor with Epstein and then reap his reward through favorable employment. Reinhart takes great offense at these accusations. How dare you? Which he contends are false, irrelevant to the CVRA claims, and gratuitous. He seeks intervention to rebut these allegations and moves for sanction. He's definitely got chutzpah. You can give him that. Yes, folks, the judge that signed the warrant to raid Mar-a-Lago, apparently, and by the accusations from Jeffrey Epstein's victims, seems like he used inside information about Jeffrey Epstein's case, or perhaps even influenced the plea deal and got a softer sentence for Jeffrey Epstein early on in the initial phases of the cover-up of the Epstein sex trafficking ring in order to get a favorable job with Jeffrey Epstein. And he did that for a couple years until he was, out of the blue, appointed as a U.S. magistrate. Showing that, once again, if you're willing to play a certain game with certain people, you can get away with anything. You can do whatever the hell you want. You can perjure yourself and lie and manipulate and take advantage and blackmail, and nothing will be done to you because they're all in it together. And that's one of the things that people really need to understand about this. When it comes to things like Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself, or the Clinton kill list, right? The 300 plus people who were close friends with Hillary and Bill Clinton who, on the occasion that they seemed like they were going to go against the Clintons, suddenly killed themselves with 2 shots to the back of the head, or drive 2 hours away from home and drown themselves in their car. Just the most outrageous, ridiculous stuff. It's not the Clintons doing this. The Clintons are agents of the CIA. It's not like the CIA and the FBI are protecting the Clintons. They're not protecting Jeffrey. They're protecting themselves, and these are their assets. Okay, it's really not that complicated. Of course, we've been calling this out for years. We were ahead of everybody on Jeffrey Epstein. We were ahead of everybody on the Clintons. We were ahead of everybody on the fact that they would be moving against Trump in this way. We have been under the same attacks that Trump and others are under, and all we ask is that you support us in this mission by going to InfoWarsStore.com. We will take on the fight. We will take on the heavy lifting. We will continue to do what feels at this point like a very dangerous job, what I'm doing right now, actively going against a completely out of control government with the media in their pocket so they can raid you, arrest you, kill you, and the media won't even question it. I mean, do you realize what an incredible threat that we're operating under? But we'll keep doing it as long as we possibly can.